If you get bit by one, it is bad. Next card. Oh, I wasn't supposed to read that. Hey guys, welcome to back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about, I think first topic is college.
Sure.
And why we here in the Gonzo household have a different viewpoint than maybe we did 15, 20 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. At this point, I really don't encourage my kids to go to college unless it's a profession that requires it. So like if they wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer, heaven forbid, or maybe if they wanted to be, an accountant. That's what I'm talking about. Of course, that's going to require some form of college, but from our viewpoint, college now has become basically a waste of time and definitely a waste of money and just a bad way for very young kids to get into some horrible debt. I know of many friends, many people that graduate college after 4 or 5 years with 100, 150, 200,000 plus in debt and have a degree that by and large is either worthless or doesn't quite allow them to begin to pay that debt back in any type of reasonable time frame. And so because of that, not just because of that, but that is one of the primary reasons why we don't encourage. Our oldest son has expressed interest in the military, but still going to school, and we fully support them. It's not like we say they can't go. We just don't think it's the end all be all anymore. This idea that you got to go to college, get your degree, that way you can have a career. And then, you send your kid off and they come out with like a, Bachelor of Arts in underwater basket weaving or something. That's basically pointless or useless. Or, the all famous like, oh, I got my degree in communications. Okay, what are you doing with that? I don't know. Because they don't know. So, unless, you have a very clear vision, like I want to be a biologist so you can know what a woman is. Or if you wanted, to get your degree, like I said before, to be a medical doctor or something, then obviously you would need to go to college for that. So stop laughing.
Yeah, so there's a standard, and I think that like when we graduated high school, it was this idea and this expectation that we needed to go to college. Well, we went to college and we didn't know what the heck we were doing in college. We went because that's what we were told we needed to do. And neither one of us knew what we wanted to do with our lives. And truthfully, just in my case, I threw my parents' money away. And in his case, he threw financial aid away. And it's not something that you can redeem later. When you have either one, money that comes from your parents it's being paid for with, or it's financial aid, once you use it, you can't get it back. And so in the scenario with myself, it was just lost credits, and I just ended up dropping out. And you feel like a failure because you didn't do what your parents wanted you to do. And I yet to have a college degree, but I would like to say that we've had a successful life in the idea of what matters and value we have. And that's ultimately in our identity in Christ and not in a degree. Now, that's not to say that degrees don't matter, because there are professions, as my husband mentioned, that you do need to have a degree for. But you can go about getting that degree without going to this traditional four-year college. I can't tell you how many times that I have seen friends, family members, children of friends and family members go off to college and they don't ever obtain that degree, but they obtain a life of freedoms that they never maybe didn't have at one point. And they have opportunities for a lot of regret, the partying scenes, things that maybe they didn't have before. Also, financial aid. If you go into school because you go to college with financial aid, you may not know what you're doing at that moment, but fast forward 10 or 20 years down the road, you may want to be able to redeem that financial aid that could be available for you. In our case, we were a family. We had at that time a family of 5. I think we were at 2 or 3 kids, and we qualified for financial aid. And there was a lot that wasn't available because he had already wasted it. And in this time, it would have been a lot more helpful. So we ended up having to pay for college in cash because that financial aid, once you use it, you lose it. You don't get to have a redo.
Yeah. And the reality is that, environment has changed. Like traditionally, when I was in high school many years ago in the 90s, it made sense to go get your degree and all that stuff because it was still so highly valued in the workplace. But with technology and how so much has changed, there's so many more avenues, for kids to be entrepreneurs themselves, to craft their own way, and things like website design or social media skills, things like that, where kids can basically create a career for themselves, learn these skills without ever having to step foot in a classroom, and I think it's such a much better way to go. Or learning a trade. I have friends that went to go learn just to be mechanics or became a nurse, or my sister's case, she became an ultrasound tech, and it took a lot less time and still really well-paying job. Mm-hmm. And she learned a trade, she learned a skill, and that's kind of more what we encourage, because I think that's where the market is now. It's not so much like this piece of paper. I mean, there are still professions that obviously value it, and sure, it still might look okay on a resume, but I think it's so watered down now. Those are the reasons why practically we say, hey guys, rethink this whole thing. Like, college might just be a waste of money. I know it was for me. I went to college, right out of high school. I went to University of Long Beach State University, and then to some community colleges, and it was just a waste of time and money. I got financial aid that I just blew through. I spent it on frivolous things. I ended up, most of the semesters I didn't even end up finishing because I just dropped out partway through. And it wasn't until years and years and years later when I had a family and I was like, I really need to finish my degree. And I went back and I got my degree in accounting. So that was something that was like, okay, well, I actually need to go to school for this. But by that time, like she said, it was like, I had a vision and a clear idea of what I wanted to do. It wasn't just a waste of time. I actually was finishing my courses. I passed all my classes and everything. But by the last 2 semesters of my schooling, my financial aid, my Pell Grants and stuff, they were gone. They were done. I already had used them up. So then we had to pay out of our own pocket. Financially, when you have a family of 6, mm-hmm. that can hurt. We are not believers in getting into debt. So
we've been there.
We've been there. We've been there, done that. So we paid out of pocket,
And did you go to a 4-year university when you now to achieve your?
No, I went to a community college first, and then I found an online school, Western Governors University, and it was very inexpensive, and I got my degree because all I really cared about was having that little piece of paper saying that I had my BS in accounting. That's all I cared about. Didn't care about the name at the top of the certificate, whether it said Stanford or UCLA or whatever. Like, that didn't matter to me. And frankly, it's just not what it used to be. It doesn't mean what it used to be. I'm sure in some circles it still does, but that was just the practical side. And the other side, and the side that's even more important to us, is the fact that education isn't what it once was in general anyway. Like, you see it, you see this in college a lot. You see kids that go to college and they have this idea that all of a sudden they're in this environment where now they're free thinkers and everything, but really they just become like everyone else, and they're in this echo chamber and they hear all of these things. And what it frankly comes down to is most of university and college nowadays is indoctrination into a certain way of thinking across the board. Kids graduating and they have this warped idea of what America really is, of what society really is, of what should be valued and what not. A lot of kids, especially as Christians, as people who believe in the Bible, and you see so many kids go into these schools and they walk out and they completely, abandoned or walked away from the faith that they grew up embracing. And, in some cases, you don't know whether it was genuine or not to begin with, but in some cases, it was, and it's sad to see, and the reality is that much of education, especially higher education, is antithetical and opposite of the Christian religion, of the Christian belief. And, I'm not saying that means Christians shouldn't go to university, but I'm saying you need to be wise. Mm-hmm. Now, part of that as a parent is preparing my kids to be aware of these things, so that if one of them or multiple of them should choose to go, to university. They're not unprepared. It doesn't, chew them up and spit them out. That is my responsibility as a dad and her responsibility as a mom. But, at the end of the day, why do I want to pay a university tens of thousands of dollars so they can try to brainwash and indoctrinate my kids into accepting a worldview that, quite frankly, is gross
and drowned in debt?
Yeah, and drowned in debt, and then embracing a lifestyle that is the lifestyle of victimization. Now I graduated and I'm $200,000 in debt, so now the government needs to forget my debt. Why? You're the one who chose to get into that debt. Why should I have to bail you out as a tax-paying citizen? That's not my responsibility. You signed on that bottom line, just like I did, and I paid off my debt.
Right.
You have all these kids graduating from these elite, prestigious universities that hate their country, that hate society, that hate so many of the values that made our country probably in the history of the world the best society that's existed in terms of our rules and government, despite what everything the media says, despite everything that's out there. There's a reason why so many immigrants want to come here, because this is still a land of opportunity. This is still a land where you can do something. This is still a land where somebody could create an app and then all of a sudden become a millionaire because they created an app that caught fire or went viral or found a niche and marketable skills that people desire nowadays. I have friends that, got really into, coding and different things like that. And back when it wasn't what it is now. And because of that, they had these marketable skills that all of a sudden people were looking for. So website design and being able to do things like that, and I get now it's like, oh, well, you need to go to school for that. No, you don't. You can learn those things. There's different ways you can go about learning them without encumbering yourself in debt. And now you can go make a career out of it. There's multiple reasons, but primarily the reason is education nowadays. It's not education, it's indoctrination. And if you're okay with that, if you're like, hey, we don't have a problem with that, that's your choice. But for Bible believing, Christian believing parents, households, you need to think twice about that, especially if you're going to be writing your name on that check and footing that bill. I'm not willing to do that. So even I talk to my kids, it's like, well, if you do want to go to university, then we're going to have to look at options, because there are certain universities and colleges that, frankly, I will not support. That's just the way it is. And for us, that's where we've come to. College, like I said, isn't the end all be all anymore. If it's necessary for your career, then by all means. But if not, there are better ways.
You can totally be successful without attending a college.
Just look at me.
The point of this video is to make sure that we are communicating that you do have choices when it comes to communicating and informing your children. And it starts with you. It starts with you doing your research and understanding what is it that you are encouraging them to do or not to do. And if you have any questions, or if you want to continue to see videos like these, comment below and give us feedback. Let us know what you want to continue to see, and we want to film it for you. Don't forget, like, subscribe, and share with your family and friends.
Yes, all that jazz.
What are we talking about? Which one?
Well, the cards. Look at the cards. Pull the cards. Just look at the cards. Read the cards.